in August of 2008. After I got my first job, I was working at a high school. I passed my BLC and I was working at a high school. I was working, maybe I was working maybe two or three jobs at the time. Being a rec therapist at one point, being not a rec therapist, but being a PT aide, and I was working as like kind of the weekend head athletic trainer for an arena league team. And then my wife got pregnant with our son. And everybody thinks that I turned my life around because my wife got pregnant with our son. But to be totally honest, when my wife got pregnant, I was kind of at my worst. I was leaving her and going out and smoking and drinking and doing all kinds of stuff, and still doing all of that stuff to kind of self-medicate and like bury my guilt as much as I could. And it was around the time that my son, by God's grace, it was around the time that my son was born, that I listened to a sermon that really just described my life at the time. It was a sermon that from First Corinthians, where the pastor was said that the unrighteous do not inherit the kingdom of God, right? And so I looked at my life, and I was living with my parents. I would go to work, I would smoke and go to work. I was that guy. Like that's where my life was. It was that level of mess. Leaving my pregnant wife at home, smelling like whatever, coming into work, and just no motivation, no initiative, no planning, no real stewarding of the blessings that I've been given, just taking all that stuff for granted. And that sermon floored me. And then I prayed to God. I asked him to save me. And it was through a process of maybe a few years of re-understanding what the gospel meant, that, though I deserved the punishment that I thought I was getting, I saw that in the cross that Jesus Christ had taken it on my behalf. And I wanted to serve him and do what he wanted me to do. And I could dedicate my life to that. And my life had a new depth to it. So it was at that point that I started reviewing my life and going, well, I need to have some initiative. Like I need to get out of my parents' house. I need to go and, really take advantage of some opportunities and push myself and drive myself, and, to take care of my family and take advantage of these few years that I have on this earth. And so that kind of started my career trajectory. So I went from, no motivation. I probably would have been at that high school, not really going anywhere. And it's not nothing that there wasn't any issue with that job. It was just, it wasn't, I could have stayed there forever, not pushing myself to do anything else. It's not as though I wasn't actually I was just kind of coasting and floating. Right. And so I just reassessed and reevaluated everything that was going on in my life. I, tried to make amends with people that I had hurt, because I left a trail of, hurt people, repaired my marriage, wanted to be a good father, saw a new meaning and depth in my marriage and in work and all the rest of that. And that's kind of been the path so far. So I, I was like, okay, I want to make some more. I want to get out of my parents' house. I want to make a little bit more money. So let me try to get into Division I college athletics. I'd had the internship with the San Diego Chargers. I was, fortunate enough to have that experience with James Collins, who was the head athletic trainer there, and Damon Mitchell, who's now currently the head athletic trainer, and Marco Zucconi, who is one of my intern, cohort members, intern class cohort members, right? And so I kind of tried to leverage some of that. Worked at Howard University. I worked 4 sports at the time, worked my butt off. While I was there, I had a lot of different interesting coaches. I had a lot of interesting experiences at Howard University that were really formative for the rest of my career. And it helped me kind of develop what my core values are as an athletic trainer. Because I, again, as a believer, I see work and as not something that is secular, but everything that we do is sacred. So everything that we believe spiritually is interwoven into everything that we do, right? So if we are made in the image of God, and God works, and God gave work before sin entered the world, then work is good. And so we should pour ourselves into that, not make an idol out of it, but we should pour ourselves into it and try to do good work for people to help other people. And so, went through a lot of kind of interesting experiences, became the director of sports medicine at Coppin State University, which was in Baltimore. While I was in Baltimore, the riots went on in Baltimore. I was in the middle of West Baltimore when those were going on. I was actually in DC with one of our pitchers who was getting a evaluation for UCL injury, and we were watching it unfold on TV over like an 8-hour period. And then I had to drive him back into Baltimore, and I was like, "Hey man, you got somewhere place you got to stay because this doesn't look like I'm not going to sleep well if I drop you back on campus right now. So let me, is there somewhere else you can stay?" And he said he had a friend who lived closer to the harbor. So I dropped him off there. Got to see the military, the military vehicles at the mall across the street and all of the kind of craziness with that. And then had the opportunity to partner with a church and help a church kind of help clean up the neighborhoods and stuff like that. But one of the things that I learned at the end of my tenure at the high school with this kind of newfound focus was that the relationships that I built with coaches and with student athletes were great opportunities to show the genuineness of my faith and the genuineness of Christ's love and the glory of those things, and to be a great ground for mentorship and just connection and evangelism. But you had to be doing the work well first, because you invalidate all the stuff that you're saying if the work that you're doing is not done well, if it's not done excellently. If they can't trust you to do your primary job, then you really invalidate your witness everywhere else. And you want to sow seeds that grow into opportunities to mentor young men and point them to Jesus. Because if you ask me for advice, the only thing I got for you is Jesus at the end of the day. If you really want to get sort of base level, I can't really promise you anything else. That I can't really give you anything. And so it was kind of navigating that and understanding what the opportunities were. I was fortunate enough when I came back to Howard University a second time, I started working with Campus Outreach, who's sort of campus kind of parachurch, I guess, ministry, just looking to make connections with people on campuses, on college campuses. And my best friend works for Campus Outreach. His name is Jonathan Morgan. He's down in North Carolina now, but he played football at Coastal Carolina. I actually played with Josh Norman down at Coastal. And man, he would encourage me about work and I would encourage him about ministry. And we were just, thick as thieves and two peas in a pod. And I just worked my tail off. I tried to work my tail off while I was there, while at the same time, having a growing family. At that point, we had our third child. We're waiting on our fourth child at the moment. And so when we talk about the question, asking questions without questioning, that kind of spills out of one of my core values. So I tell athletic trainers that there are 4 things that I think make for great athletic trainers. And I look for those character traits for anybody, not just athletic trainers, but anybody that's going to be in the sports medicine, sports performance space. First one is effort. And the second one is empathy, right? And so empathy, how that works out is having the ability to see other people's perspectives, and then creating safe spaces to have conversations and not assuming that your initial understanding of things is right? Like I always tell people that my gut reaction is usually wrong, right? I need time to process. I need time to understand. And what I learned from working in Division I athletics is I got to spend a lot of time with, we have these crazy coaches, but I got to spend a lot of time with them. I got to understand what their insecurities were, what their fears were, what their troubles were, and how, while they may be the highest paid people in that department, while they may have all the eyes on them, there are a lot of troubles and trials and difficulties that come along with this. Hold on one second. My wife actually just called me, so can we pause so I can call her back and make sure she has everything that she needs?
Yeah, why don't you put you on mute, and I'm gonna talk to Victoria for a second.
Okay.
So Victoria.
Yeah.
All right. So we've been talking a little bit. I know that we recently missed the Jamie Walls podcast where we're going to be talking about your mental health as an athletic trainer, and you were unavailable because you were out with COVID. So you have
COVID.
had a whole world of change recently. So you changed jobs, you changed the settings, you had COVID, and everything like that. And so one of the things that I want to kind of ask you, right, is where, where in your in this all this transition have you like really felt like reflection and like is this me? Is this something that I'm doing? Is this my fault, or is this okay? Well, this is just the way it is. So
Oh my God, that is like hits nail on the head. So the day I left, well, more like the night I left, I I broke down. I and a lot of people know that I have like struggling mental health and things like that. And the night I left, I ended up going to a family friend's house, and I left work about 9 o'clock. I was there till 2 o'clock in the morning because I knew that like I could not be alone. So like it was after a basketball game, it was after work, and the way things had ended, they didn't end the way I would have preferred them. I would have preferred it to be maybe a little bit more professional. But I was there because I knew that I couldn't be alone. And then the next day, it was when it all came crashing down. Like that I'm unemployed. I'm no longer at a job for something I didn't do. And then like it was like, did I do something wrong? Did I do this? Like I'm being accused of this one thing, and did I actually do that? And it's sitting there going back through the year and a half that I'd been at Elkhart, and it's like, no, I did everything right. Like I did everything I was taught to do, everything I was told to do. And I did that for a month and a half. Every day it got a little bit better, but it never got great. It honestly, even though like now I have a new job and I work, I still think about it every day. And I'm like, what did I do wrong? What did I do to make this person not like me or want to get me in trouble? But then like I sit there and I'm like, it wasn't me. And I write down, like I have a journal about it now, and it's strictly just about me leaving this job and of everything I did that was right, that like I protected myself. This is what I did. This, it wasn't me. It wasn't the other person. It was the situation in general. And man, it's hard to talk about leaving Elkhart because I love those kids. Like I can't think about some of those kids without crying. I mean, there were kids that I found, after leaving work at 9 o'clock after a basketball game, I'd go through the locker room and there was a kid asleep in the locker room because mom works 2 jobs and he's waiting for mom to get off of work at 11 o'clock at night. I never reported it because where else am I going to do? Just kick him outside? I mean, our high school, there's nothing but a highway. There's nothing around. There's nowhere for him to go. I feel safer with him being in the locker room than I did with him being outside at, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. So I would lock the doors so he couldn't get out of the locker room. Like he's stuck in the locker room where he has to leave through the back exit. I mean, one day I went in there and he's sound asleep, and I go grab a blanket out of my training room and I grab a Letterman that's hanging up in the locker room. I'm like, here's a pillow, here's a blanket. When mom, comes to pick you up, go out the outdoor because you can't get back in the building. And now nobody there for that kid. Like that kid has nobody now because nobody else knew about it. And it wasn't my place to tell, he wasn't doing anything bad. Like it wasn't my place to tell anybody. And then there's kids that like, I'm getting remind messages now from them. And they're like, Coach Morris, like, I hit a home run today, or I made a 3. And like, I wish you were here to see it. And it's like, I do too, kid. I really do. But I'm having to look back and say, hey, I need to step away from that. That's not good for my mental health. As much as I care for those kids, and I will come to any basketball game or any baseball game, I will be there for them if they get injured and they need somebody. But like, I can't dwell on it because it was making it hard. Like I wasn't looking for a job because it's like, I just want to go back to Elkhart. Like once the situation blows over, I want to go back to Elkhart. Now I'm like, I have a job. I have new athletes to care for, and it's making it a little bit easier. But as you can tell from my voice, like it's still really emotionally raw, even a month and a half after leaving.
all right, so we're definitely going to continue that conversation once we talk with Jamie. Daniel, are you back with us?
Yeah, I'm back with you. And actually, my wife is here to the side. She's here as a guest star as well.
So we were we were talking there about, you just mentioned that y'all are expecting. So Daniel's actually, or Daniel's wife, Brittany, is expecting in about 2 weeks, 2-ish weeks, their fourth child, and so that's exciting. And you were talking about how you were living with your parents and your first son, um, and then we've gotten all the way up to your core values, but again, just the transformation that occurred because you tried to fix yourself but couldn't do it, right? And then you talked about how when you finally gave your life to Christ and said, hey, this is something that's bigger than me, that's when it really changed. And we're talking about these rude coaches and things like that. So even just yesterday I had a situation where a coach came in, hey, why aren't we taping these kids' ankles? Coach, first the kid came in rude and said, I need you to do this. I said, hold up, try again. I was like, okay, well, this is what we do for everybody. If you want to get your ankle taped, then hop over there. We're going to do the rehab exercises, and then I'll tape you. Because we want them to be getting better, not just putting tape on there, right? And then they're like, no, never mind. And so it's me stepping aside saying, Coach, this is what I said. It's not that big of a deal for me, but we want them to get better. And it's not, came in hot, came in rude, but I was able to put my ego aside there. So Daniel, why don't you pick it back up where you were, and when you were talking about the questioning without questioning.
Yeah, and I two things. I really track with Victoria because like people, when you talk about some of the aspects of the job, and people go, well, why the heck do you do this anymore? And it's like these kids, it's addictive. like being there for those kids is like, there is no job in the world where you get to be around athletes and be a part of their entire story and get to influence them in the way that we do. In the college setting, we, in a lot of ways, we get to be big brother, mom, dad away from home, right? Like a lot of these kids have never been away from home, or some of them didn't have dad. Most Division I football teams are 75, 80, 90% African-American males. We got sometimes we have kids who who didn't have father figures and have never been around stable Black male figures, which is tragic to me because I grew up with an amazing father and a line of good fathers, right? But I get to be that, at least some sort of model of that in our setting. And what other setting would I get to be able to do that with individuals that everybody assumes they have it all together?
Right. I mean,
yeah.
I totally agree because like you said, like some of these people, they don't have a role model or anybody in their life or family. And we see them at the highs and the lows. Like we see them when they make that game-winning touchdown, but then we're also usually the first person that's there when they get injured, whether it's, a minor ankle sprain or it's the career-ending like ACL injury their senior year. I mean, who else besides maybe a coach or mom and dad, if, they go home to mom and dad, who else is there for that whole entire journey but us?
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes mom and dad or just, parent situation is toxic. So then they can't go in. That's the opposite of the direction that they want to go. I can't tell you how many, 6'4", 250, 300-pound kids that look like superheroes I've ever seen in my office breaking down in like babies, like crying, like weeping because of, depression or just life just beating them up or guilt or all kinds of stuff or history of abuse and all the rest of that. And that goes into the discussion with coaches is that I got to hear, again, the Bible says be slow to speak and quick to listen, right? So like I got to hear their perspective on life and what their fears were. And so it made me empathetic so that my answers weren't as sharp immediately, right? I was able to kind of diffuse situations and have kind of a heart for them as opposed to going, stupid coach, he don't even know what he's, instead of doing that, I went, okay, especially if I had a relationship with them, I could go, he's afraid of the afraid of the consequences of something he doesn't understand, right? he or she feeds their family, makes their living off of wins and losses, and this is something that directly impacts their ability to live, right? Their reputation, their way of life, right? So they hold it really, really close. Now, am I justifying it? Am I justifying how they come off, or when they say things they're not supposed to? I'm not justifying it at all. But your interaction with somebody that you have empathy for is very different than somebody that you don't, right? You can be very much more defensive when when that happens, and sometimes unnecessarily. Sometimes it doesn't de-escalate the situation, right? And what I've learned from those situations as well is that it can happen in both directions, because athletic trainers, we're around sports so much, we can question people from different departments. We can question the strength staff. We can question coaches and compliance and administrators, whether it's principals or athletic directors or SWAs or dean of students, or wherever you are in this. You can question those people, though you don't really have the expertise in that area. So the better, and I guess, and really the more humble posture that we have to have first is to ask questions. So being curious is much different than trying to undermine somebody's authority or their expertise. Like, to legitimately ask a question to understand, and your tone being one of somebody trying to understand the rationale behind something, is very different. And so that helps to set a safe space in the environment to have conversations. I tell, our athletic trainers, like, over communication is much better than anything. Like, if you talk to somebody every day, like the ability for things to be misunderstood, and some of that, like, anxiety threshold that comes with kind of sparse conversations kind of goes away, because it's just a regular part of your routine. Coach sees you every day, and you're always asking what practice is like, right? What's the structure of practice, right? What kind of drills we're going to do? And then they're always asking you every day, well, can so-and-so go? What can't they do? Can they do that drill? That's different than once a week, or spontaneously out of the blue, you go, well, what are we doing for practice today? Well, what are the drills we're going to do? It's going to be a high intensity practice or low intensity practice? Like, now that person is on the defensive, because they're like, well, where is that coming from? Are you questioning my authority or my expertise? Because some of those coaches do have those kind of hangups. Like, they may present themselves as super confident and competent and all the rest, but in their most private moments, all of us have those questions of, do I know what I'm doing? Am I right for doing it this way? And so when you poke at that, and somebody who already may have that sort of underlying feeling, now you've gotten into an unsafe environment, and now you're defensive, they're defensive. Exactly. It's just bad because everybody's heightened. Whereas if you bring it down, you bring the temperature in the room down, right? Especially if you can sense that emotions are already high, right? If you can bring the temperature of the room down and go like you did, Jeremy, which that comes with time, right? It comes with time and experience, where you go, okay, here we go. And I got a coach that's upset about something, right? So let me calm down. Let me not match his energy. Let me say real calmly, real plainly, right? I don't have to give him the, systematic review of why I'm supposed to do this way. I'm going to give him maybe 1 or 2 bullet points justifying, right, what's going on, and then kind of explaining it, and leave it at that. And if he wants to have further conversation, deflect and go, okay, if you want to talk about this another time, let's talk in another setting. Like, let's revisit this at another time, not when I'm in the middle of what's going on, right? And the way we prevent that in the converse situation, again, is that we ask questions from a posture of genuine curiosity, assuming that we don't know, and assuming the best, like assuming that they have a good and just and, at least to loosely scientifically based rationale for what they have going on. They may not. They may be nuts. But to start with assuming the best, right? Like, from my experience, starting there helps the process, and you end better if you start there as opposed to starting with they are intentionally trying to do the wrong thing, undermine my authority, do something unethical, do something unsafe, You know, some of it may just be ignorance. I can't tell you how many times I've had to re-explain COVID protocols, right? A lot, some of it is just ignorance. Like, people have not understood some of the few, and I've tried to keep it very, very simple when we go through a lot of our stuff. Like, hey, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to do this. Like 5 things, like count on your hand. We got 5 things that we're going to do over and over and over again, right? And they still go, well, can I do this and can I do that? Out of genuine ignorance, out of no sort of malicious intent, genuine ignorance of what we're doing, and kind of, you know, hyper focusing on what they got going on, you know. And so it's best for me to, and I don't do this right all the time, but it's best for me in general to assume that they are asking questions and not questioning my authority, right? And I always try to steer their conversations in that direction as well. This goes in, and I think one of the reasons we got on this before was strength and conditioning coaches, because I think the biggest thing, and I'm not an expert in sports performance and analytics or data science. There are lots of really smart people who have gone into a lot of great detail about the sort of the nuts and bolts of what you should observe and how these things work together and coalesce. But one of the things I've been very, very fortunate to do is understand how you don't ruin those relationships and how you really foster them. And one of the things I hear over and over from people I respect and people who I think, you know, have opportunities to do it better than we do it, is that there is a distrust and almost a fear between the two departments, between the sports medicine staff and the strength staff. Questioning them for what they're doing. And the athletic training staff always feels like the strength staff is questioning them for what they're doing. And so what that produces in the strength staff